Hello, my name is Tim Shryak. Welcome to Network Decode's Nautobot Navigators series. Let me be your guide as we navigate the complexities of network automation. Whether you are a network engineer or automation enthusiast, this first video will get you started towards great success with Nautobot. Please feel free to follow along with me in the public Nautobot Sandbox, located at demo.nautobot.com. You can log in using the username demo, and the password is Nautobot, as displayed right there on the screen for you. In this video, we will be showing the basics of getting started with Nautobot, and we'll walk through the platform as a new user, covering topics such as organizations, devices, and entering data. I'm so glad you're here and can't wait to show you around. Let's start navigating. So as you see here, we're on the intro screen to Nautobot, the login screen. As I had mentioned, you can see the credentials right here. Demo and Nautobot is your username and password, and the URL is demo.nautobot.com. So let's log in. Once we log in, the first thing we see is our landing page with all the various sections of the data that we might have in Nautobot. Just a quick side note, this screen is customizable once you have it installed in your environment. Here in the demo environment, that's not possible, but once you have it in yours, you can customize this as you wish to see the things that are relevant to you. You will notice there is also a search function here at the top that allows you to quickly find things in your environment, searching by whether they're the various objects, whether you're searching all, or maybe something more specific, helping you quickly get to something you might need. Over here on the left-hand side of the screen, we have the menu choices or our panel bar. As we just kind of take a quick scan down there, you'll see these are correlating to some of the things we're seeing over here on the main screen. So things like our organization. This is where we have very high-level topics about the environment. Our devices, IPAM, of course, all our IP addressing and things associated with that. Routing. Perhaps you want to model your BGP environment, for example, here in Nautobot. You can do that. Virtualization. So this is where we would store things like VMs and other various bits of virtualization. Circuits. Really interesting part of Nautobot, being able to model all of the circuits in your environment, tracking them, and being able to keep track of them here as well. Power. Whether you have PDUs or other various forms of distribution in your environment, those can be modeled here. Device lifecycle. This is one of our applications that you can see here in the demo environment. This is where we can manage hardware, software, and security aspects of a piece of hardware. Secrets. This is where we're going to integrate with a secrets management tool in order to be able to store our passwords in a secure fashion, and we'll go into that on a further video. Jobs. A key component of the Nautobot platform. This is what powers all of the applications that we see in Nautobot, and we will take a look at this here in today's video further on. Extensibility. So this is where we have some ideas around things that you might do to extend the platform to make it more relevant to you and your environment. We will look at that again in further detail as well in another video. Security. Here we have another example of some of our other applications that you can install. This one here, relevant to modeling firewall policy. Golden Config. Absolutely our #1 most popular application. This is all about configuration compliance and using Nautobot to allow you to express your intended state and compare that to the actual state of a device and get reporting on that. And follow on, even remediation. And then finally, our plugins. Plugins are smaller applications typically that are allowing us to do additional components on top of the core Nautobot program. Things like ChatOps, device onboarding, and finally our single source of truth app. Very powerful for synchronizing data between Nautobot and some other tool. And then finally down here, our user, in this case we're logged in as demo, but this is where you would be able to come in and customize things relative to your user when you're in your own environment and set up your own profile. So now let's take a look at devices. As we start to drill in here, we'll see, as we drop that menu down, we see our first choice of all of the devices we might have in our environment, or at least that we've added into Nautobot. You can see here, we see first we have the name of the device, its status, Is it active? Is it maybe planned? Is it in decommissioning state? Whatever the state of that device is, we can model here and keep track of. This can also be used for monitoring, for example. So we only monitor things that are perhaps in the active state. Tenant. Now this isn't going to be relevant to every use case, but this is where you can separate your devices into various categories, maybe based on, let's say, business unit. Perhaps your business or your organization has different business units by which you separate your environments. You could use this field here if desired. It's not required, but it is absolutely here for you to segregate your devices if you wish. A role. A really key element of Nautobot and the concepts within Nautobot is abstraction of a device into its higher level concepts. And this is one of those ideas. This is where we're looking at and saying, hey, this particular device, it is an edge device, or it's a leaf device, or here is the PDU. So being able to categorize our devices into roles is really important, because this is how we're then later on able to start to use this information to make change in our environment. We can then say, hey, I want to do something to all of the leafs that are located in this particular data center, perhaps. Or maybe that are of type Arista is another example. So we have lots of options the way we can proceed by this using this functionality of role. Very important element. Type. So what kind of device is it? Is it a Cisco Catalyst or an Arista or an APC PDU? Location. What is the site that it is located in? And its key code here, as we see displayed here. Here we're in Amsterdam, for example. Rack. So what rack is it installed in? And its IP address, its management IP, is what's assigned out here. These fields, as you'll notice here, these are optional. You do not have to put these in, but they're really great as you start to use Nautobot as the one-stop place to locate all of the information you have about a device in your environment. Let's continue on down through the devices menu and take a look at platforms. So what are platforms? Platforms, you can think of these like the operating system running on your particular piece of hardware. A really good example as we look through the Cisco family. Is it iOS? Is it iOS XE? Is it iOS XR? Is it NXOS? Etc., etc. So this is how we're able to distinguish between the various firmware families that we might have from a particular vendor and categorize them here for us, giving us a good overview of how many we have running in our environment, as well as how we're going to enable the automation to access those devices, as in what driver are we using, and for whether it's the network or Napalm in this case as well here. Okay, let's move down to device types now. So what is a device type? A device type gives us a way to describe more abstractly a particular version of hardware from a vendor. So here we can see some examples, a Catalyst 6509E. And here is its part number, and the size of it is, how it fits in the rack, and how many of them we happen to have. So we can see that high-level description here of the device and the information about it. This is also relevant, just kind of by the way, as we start to use the device lifecycle module, we can get our end of support, end of sale information from the vendor and report on that. So here's a really good example of, hey, this particular device has gone end of sale, and we need to be starting to plan for its replacement prior to end of support. So that's a quick view of device types. And now let's just take a look at manufacturers as well. Here I tried to cover the topics that you would need to understand as you just begin to use Nautobot and the fields that need to be populated in order to add a device. So we need a device itself, we need a platform, we need a device type, and we need a manufacturer. Manufacturer, of course, being Cisco, Arista, Juniper, Meraki, you name it. And while we're here on this screen, I also do just want to take a quick look at connections, because this is another one of the really powerful use cases from Nautobot. We're able to model out how our devices are interconnected, whether that is via the cabling. So we can model all of the cabling in our environment, including PDUs and patch panels, and all of the cables that go between those. So we can see that physical layer. So here you can see, we've got a serial number here on a cable, where it is connected on its A side and where it's connected on its B side, and its status is we're expecting this to actually be connected. We're expressing our intent here. So this is great for our DC Ops team, that they can perhaps use this as their cut sheet as needed to go out and do cabling in a new data center, or maybe we're making some updates. But we can also see things like interface connections. So this is more of your layer 2 connectivity, the connection between a device and another device and what we're expecting. Okay, so that covers our basics under a device. Let's go ahead and take a look at the items under organization. First, we see here location types. So these are the various categories of information that you might have relative to the way you organize your business. So here are some examples. This might apply to you, or maybe you do something a little different. We might have a region, then a site, and then maybe a data center pod. However it makes sense in your environment, you can organize this, whether it's region, maybe then state, then site. Whatever you do in your particular environment is how you can organize this data here. And then, of course, the locations themselves. So this is where we start to get into the more interesting parts of all of our locations we might have in our environment across the globe, or whatever your particular footprint is. So let's just take a look at one example. Perhaps as we were looking earlier at Amsterdam, let's go ahead and look in our Amsterdam site. And we can see information about it. Hey, this site is active. It's part of the Netherlands region, which belongs to Europe. So you can notice there we're able to nest the regions. So we can reuse that location type as we nest it down. And then, hey, it belongs to our Nautobot airport tenant, and it's located in the Amsterdam airport. And we can see some basic high-level stats about the site, how many racks we have, how many devices, prefixes consumed, etc. So we get a nice overview of this particular location and all of the devices located there. And we can also see some other interesting things, such as our floor plans. Right, so if we'll take a look at our location floor plans here, let's go ahead as well and go right into that Amsterdam site, and we can take a look at our overhead view of this particular data center footprint. We can specify the number of tiles we have in that site, and then we can view what that site looks like. Just a quick tip for those of you, depending on your browser, you may notice that when you move your mouse down over to the image that it starts to do things like that, scrolling rather than zooming, rather than scrolling up and down. So all you need to do is just make sure you go over to the side of your browser and use the scroll bar on the side to move up and down when you're in that view, so that you avoid that zooming in and out action. But here we can see our racks that we have installed, our available floor tiles, and we can lay out our footprint as it may be in the real world. We can also specify things like hot aisle, cold aisle, the direction that the rack faces, and then even this is all active and clickable. So for example, here I am looking at this rack and I said, hey, I want to check what devices are installed in that rack. I can click on it, I can see the devices there, and then I can even click into a device. So I can go all the way from that bird's eye view of the data center to the rack and then down into the device itself. So while we were there, let's just click back and take a look at that rack in detail as well. We're able to see the specifics about it, how it's utilized. So we can get some reporting on this. This is really great as you start to summarize this data and look at it for the site, for example, like, hey, how are we doing overall in this site for space and power? Being able to compare what we're expecting to consume versus maybe what we actually are based on our reports that we might get from our data center provider. But all the details about the rack, as you can see here, are able to be modeled, including our power, the way we're feeding power in, and our PDUs. So now let's take a look at adding your first device into Nautobot. So we're going to go back to the devices menu, and I'm going to click on the devices there themselves just to re-emphasize the view of the device view. But if we were just going to add a device, there are a couple places you could do that. You could click here, right here on the menu tree to click add, or over here in the main section. So either way, we're going to end up in the same place, which is here on Add a New Device. So let's just say that we wanted to add Tim's new router into our environment. And we said, hey, this is obviously going to be a router since I called it that. And we're going to say that it is, let's just say it's a Cisco CSR. We're going to put it in that, let's go with this ANG site here. And then we will come down and see any other required fields. And no, I think I'm good. Let's go ahead and try to create that. And oh, I missed something. So really helpful here. It's always going to remind you things that we might need to select. And here I didn't select the status. So I'm going to say, hey, I'm actually just putting this in my planned state because I'm going to be adding it in. Let's try that again. Go ahead and click on create. And then, oh, interesting. I forgot that I had created a standard last week that says that my names for devices should look like this. That is, they should be 3 letters followed by 2 numbers by a dash, by some descriptor, followed by dash, followed by 2 numbers. This is completely configurable, so you can specify how a particular field in its regex pattern should look. This way, we can ensure that whether it's yourself or someone else doesn't forget the standard and decide to enter things however they wish. So let's go ahead and add this device in now properly. So ANG 01, let's just say, or 00, and it's going to be the router, and it's the first one. Let's try that again now. Now, hopefully this time we finally have all of our ducks in a row, and we'll get this guy added in. There we go. Now we've created our first device and router and located him in the ANG01 site. Now let's suppose that the site that you are adding a device to didn't exist yet, and so we need to go create a new site. So we're going to go back up to our organization, we're going to go to our locations, and we're going to add a new site here under locations. And let's just say that we needed to add a new site in Chicago. But in our case, we don't have the state of Illinois added in as a region yet. So let's go through that process of creating the appropriate steps. So first step, we're going to add the region, which in this case is going to be Illinois, which belongs in our parent region of the Americas. So we'll go ahead and add in Illinois as our state. And we're going to say, perhaps it's in planned mode. We're still building it out. It's not quite built yet. And there's optional fields that you might wish to add if desired, including things like its physical address, its latitude and longitude, so we could locate it on a map perhaps, as well as any other custom fields or tags you might wish to add. But here in our case, let's just say that we're just quickly adding in that region. So now we can go ahead and click on this handy little add right here and get right back to continuing down into the rest of the tree. So now we're going to go ahead and create the actual site within the higher level region of Illinois. So I can choose now site, and I'm now going to search for Illinois, and we will now be able to make that as the parent, and now we'll be able to set up our, let's say, Chicago hotel will be the next site name. And this is also going to be in plan mode since we're still working on this. So there we are. We've now created that full hierarchical tree of the Americas as a region, Illinois as a region, and then the Chicago hotel as our site. Now we could then also potentially come in and say, hey, you know what? Now we know some contact info about that. Maybe we did some planning. We knew it was going to go there, but we didn't have these details yet. Great. We just got that info. So we can come in and edit and say, hey, we know who the where the physical address is. Maybe it's 100 Main Street in Chicago, and its shipping address is, let's just say it's the same. So we'll leave that alone. The contact name is Susan Smith, and her number is 555-555-5555, of course. And her email is just, let's say, susan@chicago.com. We can now update those details here into our database, and now we have that location information and details here stored for the future reference. So that concludes looking through the various high-level concepts that you might have as you go to add a device into Nautobot. All of the things that we need to do under device, such as the manufacturer, the device type, the device itself, and under organization, where we have locations, location types, and racks, of course, as well. Now, let's jump ahead to another concept within Nautobot, really important, and that is jobs. The ability to actually use Nautobot to do functional work. I'm going to show an example here of, say we wanted to generate an intended configuration for a device because you had installed the Golden Config app and you're now using it to make configuration changes in your environment. So we'll just go through the high-level ideas of the way that a job works and how you use them. So if we click into the job, we can see some basic details about how it's configured, but really what we're trying to do is get to this Run Schedule button that you see here. Now I am going to go back real quick just to highlight, just as we mentioned before, that there are multiple ways to get to things. Here in the jobs ecosystem, it is the same. So as you're looking down your menu options of jobs that you have available to you, we see that Generate Intended Configuration. We don't have to click on it directly. We can just come over here to the right-hand side and hit the Run Schedule button, taking us directly into that run screen. So really helpful to avoiding, if you don't want to look in the details, you can just get right to what you need. Now let's say that we're going to run this job for a particular device. But you'll notice there are lots of ways you could run it. Maybe you want to generate configurations for all of the devices you have in your environment that are Cisco and that are happening to be running Cisco iOS and are of a type of, let's say, see if we have a good example here, of Edge. So we're looking for anything that's an Edge device that's Cisco and Cisco iOS specifically. We could then run that job and generate all of our configurations for all of those types of devices, just as an example. But here, for argument's sake, let's just do a single device. Maybe you're just doing a one-off change and we only need to get to a single device. Now, of course, you potentially could have many devices in this list, and that'd be really painful to scroll through, so we don't need to. We can just easily do a quick search there and type in the site that we're looking for, or information that will get us to what we want, which in this case is Jersey City. So let's render the configuration for this backbone router in Jersey City. So we're going to go ahead and run this immediately, and we'll fire this job off. Nautobot is now going to use the Golden Config app to take our intended state, defined here in the Nautobot database, along with our Jinja templates that define the actual syntax we're looking for, and render out that configuration for us. So we can see as we look through that process, all of the details that the job is doing are being logged here in the evidence. So we have this for future reference. Maybe there's a problem, we need to do some troubleshooting, or we just want to track who did what. We can come in and take a look at that and see those details here. And we can finally see that the fully rendered configuration was generated and ultimately pushed out into its repository and stored out there for us for then application to the device. Now we could actually click on that device there as we see in the log and see that information, which could be really useful. Maybe we just want to double check, hey, what's that device? Where is it located? Looking for some details about it, right? Able to just bounce back and forth here in the UI of Nautobot. So that concludes our first hands-on guided sandbox video here in the Nautobot Navigators series. I hope you enjoyed that quick view and you were able to follow along with me, looking at the organization, devices, and then finally jobs. Hope you learned something new, and we're so excited to dive into our next video where we're going to cover some deeper topics around Nautobot's single source of truth functionality. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.